Local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Welcome and good morning. This is a very special 100th episode of Byline Wilmington. If you're joining us for the first time or you've been with us for years, we want to thank you. We'll continue to feature the people and the issues that are the fabric of the Lower Cape Fear and asking the questions that you want answered. Today, after the massive Gulf oil spill, what's the future of offshore drilling for North Carolina? Jim Lutze is a member of the governor's panel on the issue and co-chairs a state commission on offshore energy exploration. He joins us to talk about the Gulf crisis and what it could mean to drilling off the North Carolina coast. Jim, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
Briefly, tell us about these two panels that you serve on and what their mandates are.
The first was a legislative panel that was set up by the General Assembly back in 2009 to take a look at the issue of all kinds of energy production offshore, oil, wind, various other technologies.
And they're asking you to give them direction?
They're asking for what our view is on the potential and the problems. In other words, what is the good part? What's the downside?
And then you serve on a governor's panel.
Then the governor has set up a panel called her Science Advisory Panel, and what they are going to do is pick up and follow on from what the legislative panel did and try to flesh it out. Now, of course, I think it was supposed to be a simple handoff when we did that, but now it's gotten a lot more complicated.
So let's talk about now. What was your reaction when this whole crisis started to unfold?
I can't say I told you so, because we did not observe or think that this was going to happen. In other words, we had been assured by the Petroleum Institute, we'd been assured by the Minerals and Management Service, the federal agency, that this was a very rare occurrence and that the technology was now so sophisticated. They refer to it as space age technology, and they did all kinds of diagrams and videos and everything else about how this worked and how you couldn't have a problem.
And then in the beginning, BP assured the government and the public that it was under control, would not be a major issue, which was untrue. Do you think it was a deliberate misrepresentation to minimize the initial press?
Yes, I do. If you look, and now we're looking and realizing that there have been a number of oil spills similar to this around the world. They have not been in coastal waters of the United States, but they've been off Indonesia, or they've been in Nigeria, or they've been somewhere else. And that other countries have safety procedures in place that we didn't follow. So I think, in a sense, the wool or the oil's been pulled over our eyes.
So this is probably, you already answered it, but you don't trust the BP PR machine?
No.
When it comes to something like this?
No, I do not.
Well, how about the government? Do you trust the government when it comes to things like this?
I do not trust the Minerals and Management Service in their regulatory role. It's sort of interesting. They are in charge both of the leasing of the land, and they also are in charge of policing these things. So they had a dual role. I think the administration now wants to break those two roles up to separate them out. But they had, in a sense, a conflict of interest, shall we say.
You can find your answer to the minerals and management portion of the government. Someone I was talking with the other day said, the government will tell you anything to accomplish what they see as their ends.
I'm not sure you can make quite that broad a statement. There are government agencies that work well, and there are government agencies that don't work well. I think here we have a real breakdown in oversight by an agency that was supposed to be doing oversight.
All right, so you weigh the benefits of offshore exploration, in this case it was for oil, against the damage that accidents like this can cause. How do you balance that out in your mind, or can you?
That's the question that we asked over and over again and tried to answer as far as North Carolina. What's the cost-benefit analysis here? In other words, how do you weigh the risk against the potential benefit?
I just made a quick list in my mind of what some of the potential damage issues are. Loss of life, spoiling the environment, and this could be in 5 states. ruining.
You mean from this particular
From
spill?
this particular,
Yeah.
ruining tourism, decimating an entire industry, the livelihood and a way of life for generations of families, fishing, destroying or threatening shrimp, oysters, blue crabs, clams, scallops, sea trout. The list just goes on. Is it a fair trade-off?
When put that way, no, it certainly isn't. And if you, it's also a question, and a wide-ranging question. The coastal states are the states that are asked to take the risk with offshore drilling. If Oklahoma wants to drill, that's an Oklahoma problem. But if you drill off the coast of North Carolina, we are not equally sharing with the rest of the country the potential damage here to our fishing industry, our tourism industry, various other things. So it is important that we make a state decision. On the other hand, to some extent, it is out of our hands. If they're drilling 40 miles offshore, that's not in state waters. And they have made it rather clear to us that they wanted our opinion. They wanted to know what we thought. But in the end, they, the Minerals Management Service, were going to make their decision independently.
So if it's not up to us, what is the exercise of the governor appointing a panel, and what's that all about?
They want state approval. I mean, they don't want to run roughshod over the state.
They meaning the feds?
The feds would like the states to buy in. They would like the states to be on board on this. And there is a certain carrot, of course, that is offered to the states.
Which is?
Which is a share in the lease money that the federal government gets off leasing the oil rights. So in the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf states get a share of the leases that are given. We have no assurance. There is no such legislation for North Carolina. So there's no assurance that North Carolina would get lease money. We probably would. But
well, if you, let's say North Carolina gets some of that money, is it a fair trade-off?
Okay. Obviously, if you're going to have an oil spill like we currently have, it is not a fair trade-off. And I am very dubious. Certainly now I am even more dubious that it pays to drill offshore North Carolina. I am not sure that it pays to drill offshore.
How long have these two bodies that you're on, the governor's panel and the commission, how long have you been meeting?
Approximately two. Well, our committee was supposed to report at the beginning of the legislative session, but they never appointed, of the last legislative session, they never appointed the committee and got started. We didn't get started, I think, until April of last year. So we've been meeting for approximately a year.
For a year. Did you have a bias going into it?
I tried to check my bias at the door. I tried to be, and I told the Senator Bass Knight, who appointed me to the commission, that I was going to try to be fair. And the commission had members of the oil industry on it, as well as members of environmental groups on it. And I was, in a sense, a kind of a neutral moderator or co-chairman.
All right, we'll come back and we'll talk more to Jim Luzzi about North Carolina offshore drilling and some alternative energy sources and how that might stack up to drilling for oil when we come back. Stay with us.